Stupidity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a villain's mask or sharpen knives in the dark. It sits next to you in meetings, nodding along. It manages teams. It makes decisions that shape your life, and it never doubts itself for a second. You've seen it. The co-worker who mistakes confidence for competence, the boss who can't distinguish between a good idea and a loud one, and the friend who repeats slogans like they are revelations. They are not evil. They are not even aware of the damage they cause. That's what makes them dangerous. Evil requires intention, calculation, and a kind of intelligence that can be anticipated and countered. Stupidity requires nothing. It operates on autopilot, immune to reason, and utterly convinced of its own righteousness. You can negotiate with evil. You can expose evil and predict its moves. Stupidity doesn't negotiate. It doesn't even realize you're trying. Evil kills with purpose. Stupidity kills quietly, accidentally, while smiling and asking if you've seen the latest memo. You think you're being patient when you explain something for the third time and get the same blank stare. You think you're being diplomatic when you soften your language to avoid offending someone who can't follow basic logic. You're losing ground. Every time you adjust your communication to accommodate someone's unwillingness to think, you're teaching them that their ignorance is your problem. They learn nothing. You lose time, energy, and eventually credibility. Because while you're busy managing their incompetence, they are making decisions. They are voting on policies. They are shaping the environment you have to navigate. The cost isn't just frustration. The cost is that systems begin to reflect their limitations instead of your capabilities. You keep explaining. They keep nodding. Nothing changes. The stupid person doesn't feel stupid. They feel reasonable, cautious, and balanced. They've convinced themselves that refusing to take a clear position is wisdom, that repeating what everyone else says is prudence, and that never questioning authority is loyalty. Meanwhile, you're stuck in an environment designed around their comfort level, their pace, their inability to handle complexity. The gap between what needs to happen and what's possible under their leadership grows every day. You've mislabeled this. You thought the problem was that they don't understand. The problem is that they don't need to. Their stupidity is functional. It protects them from the discomfort of uncertainty, the burden of moral responsibility, the social risk of standing alone. Intelligence is exhausting. Stupidity is easy. And in most environments, easy wins. You've been taught to fear evil people, the ones who plot and scheme and lie. You've been trained to watch for corruption and hidden agendas. That's a mistake. Evil is rare. Evil requires vision, the ability to imagine outcomes and work backward. Most people don't have that capacity. What they have is the ability to stop thinking, to surrender judgment to whoever speaks loudest or holds the most impressive title, and to confuse the absence of doubt with the presence of truth. Stupidity is more dangerous than evil because it's more common, more socially acceptable, and infinitely harder to fight. You can expose an evil person. You can present evidence, build a case, and rally opposition. Try exposing a stupid person. They don't see the evidence. They don't follow the case. And the people you're trying to rally are just as stupid, so they don't see the problem either. Evil creates enemies. Stupidity creates compliance. And compliance, sustained long enough, becomes culture. Watch what happens when you challenge them. Not aggressively, just with a question that requires them to defend their position. They don't engage. They deflect, retreat into clichés, or appeal to authority. If you persist, they don't get smarter. They get hostile, because you're not just questioning their opinion. You're threatening the framework that allows them to avoid thinking. This is when the system adjusts around you. Meetings happen without you. Decisions get made before you're consulted. Your input is acknowledged but not acted on. You're not fired. You're not demoted. You're just quietly sidelined, because people who ask inconvenient questions are inconvenient. The stupid don't exclude you out of spite. They exclude you out of self-preservation. Your presence makes them feel inadequate, and that feeling is intolerable. So they remove the sauce. You. They'll tell themselves you're difficult, negative, not a team player. What they mean is that you make them think, and thinking reminds them of how little they actually know. Within 6 months, you're either gone or silent. Either way, they've won. Not through strategy, but through sheer incapacity to tolerate discomfort. The evil person would have fired you for being a threat. The stupid person sidelines you for being complicated. The result is identical. You're neutralized. But with evil, at least you know why. History is full of examples, but one stands out: Neville Chamberlain. He wasn't evil. He wasn't corrupt. He was a man of peace, deeply committed to avoiding war, convinced that diplomacy and goodwill could resolve any conflict. He met with Hitler, signed agreements, returned to Britain waving a piece of paper and declaring peace for our time. He believed it. That wasn't villainy. That was stupidity. The refusal to see what was obvious to anyone willing to look: that Hitler's promises were tactical, that appeasement was fuel for aggression, that the absence of war is not the same as peace. Chamberlain's stupidity cost millions of lives, not because he wanted harm, but because he never saw it coming. He projected his decency onto others, mistook his hope for reality, and disabled every mechanism that might have prevented catastrophe. An evil leader would have known what Hitler was and chosen appeasement anyway for strategic gain. Chamberlain didn't know. He couldn't process the information in front of him. His stupidity wasn't a character flaw. It was a systemic failure of judgment, immune to correction because it was rooted in moral certainty. He thought he was being responsible. He thought he was protecting his people. And because his intentions were pure, he never questioned whether his actions matched reality. Chamberlain was replaced, but only after the war he tried to prevent became inevitable. The stupid leader doesn't learn from mistakes. They simply preside over disasters they never see coming. Think about the woods at night. You're lost, and you have a choice. Follow the person who says, "I'm not sure, but I think we should try this direction and adjust if it's wrong." Or follow the person who says, "I know exactly where we are, just trust me." Most people follow the second one. Confidence feels like competence. Certainty feels like safety. The second person is guessing too. They just lack the self-awareness to doubt themselves. That's stupidity in action. It doesn't present as ignorance. It presents as leadership. A stupid person in power is more dangerous than a smart person because they wield authority without the capacity for self-correction. They make bad decisions with total conviction, and when reality contradicts them, they don't revise. They double down. The evil person changes course when the plan fails because they are goal-orientated. The stupid person doesn't even recognize failure. They reinterpret outcomes to match their expectations, blame external forces, and continue doing exactly what didn't work. Organizations die this way, not from malice, but from leaders who can't think and subordinates who've learned not to question. There are exceptions. Leaders who broke the pattern. George Marshall, U.S. Army Chief of Staff during World War II, built a system that promoted based on performance, not seniority or likability. He fired generals who couldn't adapt, elevated unknowns who could think, and created an environment where questioning orders was not just allowed but expected. He didn't tolerate yes men. He didn't reward confidence over competence. That's why the U.S. military went from unprepared in 1941 to victorious in 1945. Marshall understood that stupidity in leadership is a structural problem. You don't fix it by hoping for smarter people. You fix it by designing systems that can't afford to promote the incapable. Most systems do the opposite. They select for agreeableness, for people who don't create friction, who execute without questioning. These people aren't evil. They're just not thinking. And in the absence of thought, stupidity fills the vacuum. Bonhoeffer, writing from a Nazi prison cell, identified stupidity as sociological, not psychological. It's not about low intelligence. It's about the surrender of independent thought to external forces, propaganda, peer pressure, authority figures, and comforting narratives. A stupid person is someone who has outsourced their judgment. They don't evaluate claims. They repeat them. They don't weigh evidence. They defer to whoever speaks with the most confidence or holds the most power. This makes them a tool, not for evil masterminds, but for any system that benefits from unquestioning compliance. The tragedy is that they feel safe doing this. They feel virtuous. They believe they are being responsible, loyal team players. They have no idea they've become obstacles to progress, enablers of dysfunction, and carriers of systemic decay. An evil person knows they are doing harm and does it anyway. A stupid person causes harm and calls it duty. You can imprison evil. You can expose evil. You can turn people against evil once they see what it's doing. Stupidity is invisible to itself. It wraps itself in good intentions, moral language, appeals to unity and stability. By the time you've proven the harm, the stupid are already elsewhere, repeating the same mistakes with the same confidence, utterly unaware that they are the common factor in every failure. Organizations select for traits that make people easy to manage: agreeableness, conformity, the ability to execute orders without questioning them. These traits correlate with stupidity in the functional sense. Not lack of intelligence, but lack of independent judgment. The person who never pushes back, never asks why, never challenges assumptions is the person who gets promoted. Because they are safe. They don't threaten egos. They don't slow down processes. They don't create friction. But they also don't catch mistakes, don't innovate, don't adapt when circumstances change. Systems designed for efficiency in stable conditions become traps in volatile ones. By the time the environment shifts, the entire leadership layer is populated by people who can't think their way out. This isn't conspiracy. It's not corruption. It's structural selection bias. Boards choose CEOs who won't rock the boat. CEOs hire deputies who make them feel smart. Deputies promote managers who don't ask hard questions. Within a decade, you have an executive suite incapable of responding to disruption, not because they are bad people, but because the system filtered out everyone capable of independent thought. The evil CEO loots the company and leaves. The stupid CEO genuinely tries to save the company using the same logic that's killing it, and when the company dies, they are confused. They did everything right. They followed the playbook. They listened to consultants. The problem is that the playbook was written by people just as stupid, and consultants get paid whether the advice works or not. You can recover from evil leadership. You fire them, reverse their policies, rebuild. Stupidity leaves nothing to reverse. The damage is diffuse, embedded in 1,000 small decisions that all seemed reasonable at the time. By the time you realize what happened, the people responsible have retired with pensions, and the new leadership is staffed by the same selection process that created the problem. You're living in the aftermath of this right now. Look at the people making decisions in your organization, your government, your community. Ask yourself, were they chosen because they are capable of complex thought, or because they are good at playing the game? The answer tells you whether you're operating in a system that can adapt or one that's already failing in slow motion. If stupidity is embedded in leadership, every policy, every strategy, every response to crisis will reflect that limitation. You can't outthink a system run by people who don't think. You can only watch as it degrades. The cost is permanent. Not that stupid people make bad decisions. That's obvious. The cost is that they create environments where intelligence becomes a liability, where the people capable of solving problems leave, stay silent, or get pushed out. What remains is a self-reinforcing loop. Stupid leaders select stupid subordinates, who implement policies that make sense only to other stupid people, which produce outcomes that confirm everyone's biases, which get interpreted as proof that they need more control. You lose the ability to fix anything because the people who could fix things are no longer in the room. Evil can be contained by laws, oversight, checks, and balances. Stupidity can't, because stupid people don't see themselves as the problem. They see themselves as solutions. They are not breaking rules. They are following them. They are not ignoring evidence. They are interpreting it through frameworks that make them feel competent. Every mechanism you build to stop them gets operated by them, and within months, it's another tool for suppressing dissent and reinforcing conformity. The only correction is collapse. Systems run by stupid people fail. Not quickly, but inevitably. They fail when reality stops cooperating with their assumptions, when competitors who can think outmaneuver them, and when crises demand adaptation and all they have is repetition. By that point, the stupid are gone. They've moved to other roles and other organizations, ready to repeat the cycle. What they leave behind is rubble. The people who warned them were right, but there's no satisfaction in that. Being right doesn't rebuild what stupidity destroyed. Stupidity in power is not a personality flaw to accommodate. It's a structural threat that compounds silently until the cost is irreversible. You can keep adjusting your language, lowering your expectations, managing around their incapacity. That's how you become complicit. Or you can recognize that the quiet death stupidity causes, the innovations it kills, and the communities it degrades are not accidents. They are predictable outcomes of tolerating people who can't think in positions that require thought. Evil gets memorials. Stupidity gets obituaries no one connects. The organization that collapses, the policy that fails, the election that swings, the community that empties. No single villain, just a succession of reasonable-sounding people who couldn't imagine being wrong. You won't get credit for fighting this. The stupid won't thank you for trying to save them from themselves. They'll call you cynical and difficult. They'll outlast you because endurance is easier than intelligence. What you lose is the future you could have built if competent people had been in charge. That future doesn't come back. Stupidity doesn't kill with intention. It kills with certainty. And certainty, repeated long enough, becomes truth to everyone who stopped thinking.